Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Dough Doctor. I'm your host and baking expert, Chef Colette, and I have a great show planned for you today, so let's get started. It's so great to see you guys dropping in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me know what you're baking this weekend, if you're baking this weekend. Are you baking anything for your Oscar party? Let us know. And also, where are you logging on from? We'd love to know. I am coming to you live from Hollywood adjacent, Los Angeles. That's my neighborhood. It's Hollywood adjacent. So yeah, it's a big weekend for us here in LA. And it looks, bakers, like it might stop raining. So anyway, let's get started. Hello everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have some great questions to start us off. So I'd like to start with that. Well, actually, we have a start before the start, and I'd like to give a shout out to two of our bakers who tagged me in some beautiful posts. Pistol Packing Mama, she tagged me in her post of gorgeous, gorgeous caramel rolls, sticky buns. They were just off the charts. That was a beautiful bake. And then BB Cab, he went ahead and made our whole wheat loaf from last week, and it turned out just gorgeous. So please remember to tag me in your posts so I can share your beautiful bakes, and I promise you, bakers, one day I'll be less low tech and I'll be able to touch screens and show you all those beautiful bakes in real time. Fingers crossed, always. Yeah. So now for today, we'll get to our questions, but just to tease what's coming up next, I want to let you know who won the butter poll, because yesterday I posted a butter poll. What's your favorite butter? I wasn't too surprised, but I have to say you guys are super ambitious. You don't try the easy, you don't take the easy way out. Not my bakers, not at all. So we'll talk about that. And then I'm going to demo a beautiful shortbread recipe, which I actually adjusted the formula, I adjusted the recipe after the results of the butter poll. So more about that in just a minute. So that's what's coming up. So questions, and please, please, bakers, drop your questions into the comments. Once I'm done with the questions here that came in during the week, I will check for your live questions. Okay, so I had a question that came in from a baker who lives overseas, and our baker asked, what do I do if I can't get bread flour? And my answer was this: if you can get all-purpose flour, if you're in the European Union, it should work fine because it won't be bleached. And this is just a lesson for everybody. One type of flour that we want to avoid when we're baking bread in particular is bleached flour. And in the European Union, the chemicals, they bleach flour in Europe, but they naturally bleach flour with sunlight because the European Union has outlawed the chemicals that bleach flour. They've deemed them to be unhealthful. I don't have all the specs on those chemicals and the thinking behind outlawing them, but let's just put them in the blanket of unhealthful. Now for us, we know as bakers, and I've said this several times to you as over the course of so many episodes, the one flour that can be beneficial to be bleached is cake flour, just because the bleaching process allows the batter to accept the large amount of sugar that is just naturally part of a cake batter. So anyway, so my suggestion for our baker overseas is to investigate the strongest flour they can find, probably their all-purpose blend, and then make sure, and labels are a big thing everywhere, make sure the label says it's unbleached, and know that if you're in the EU, if it was bleached, it was just by the sun. and that's not going to change it as aggressively as the chemical agents normally used in the bleaching process. So that's question number 1. Now, question number 2, our baker Cyrus, he wanted some tips for nice, crispy waffles. Well, Cyrus, I've got those tips for you and everybody else. Put it in the comments if you like to make waffles. Waffles are kind of magical, aren't they? Oh, it's been a long time since I've had a waffle. You know, going out for breakfast, the pandemic kind of, took a chunk out of that activity, I have to say. So let's talk making great waffles at home. Well, number 1, what you want to do is make sure there's some fat in the batter, like some melted butter as part of the batter. If there isn't, your waffles will not be, they won't melt in your mouth. They're going to be more bready, because they don't have the fat to coat the gluten strands in the flour that make the end product nice and tender. So there has to be some fat in the batter. It can be butter, it can be margarine, it could be earth balance, but that's pretty much, it's very important. Number 2, when you grease your waffle iron, use shortening. Grease your waffle iron with shortening. Be careful. I would probably use maybe a pair of tongs or a brush. That's what I would use. A silicone brush in the shortening. You're going to brush the waffle iron instead of spraying it. Bakers, I cannot tell you how evil pan spray is. Because of the propellants in it, it's not healthy, but it also doesn't really, for something like a waffle iron with all those grooves, it's not the best. There are brands that are better. The Vegeline brand, which is the most expensive pan spray, that's the one usually the food service industry uses. That one can be okay. But honestly, so for those good crispy waffles, you're going to use vegetable shortening, a silicone brush, and you're going to brush it on, and it's going to crackle and speckle, and you're going to be careful, but that's what you're going to use. And finally, if your waffles, and here's the backstory, bakers, we actually have had a convo, Cyrus and I, for quite a while about waffles and getting, those crisp, lovely, out to breakfast waffles, how to replicate that. Well, everywhere on the planet, and I've worked in some pretty swanky hotels, pretty much use a mix. And but we're not going to talk about using a mix. I'm just going to say that's also part of the lightness. But the way to replicate that lightness is the flour. So, straight all-purpose flour can make for a heavy waffle. So ideally, we would use pastry flour. But pastry flour is really challenging to get in our supermarkets here in the United States. Bakers, you have to order it. And you have to order it either from Central Milling or kingarthurflour.com. They're pastry flour, okay? So you're like, man, that's too much. I just want yummy waffles. I have a solution. So what you're going to do is whatever flour amount your recipe says, you're going to use 3/4 all-purpose and 1/4 cake, and you're going to sift that together 2 or 3 times so it's nice and homogeneous, and that's what you're going to use for your flour. We need a lighter flour to make a lighter waffle. A light waffle is a waffle. To make those waffles, we need a lighter flour, and that's the way easy peasy at home, we are going to get it. So Cyrus, I hope that helps. And just let us know, post photos of those gorgeous waffles. And last but not least, when you're making waffles, you want to make sure that waffle iron is nice and hot. That is really critical. And let it heat up for a minute or two in between waffles. Really, really important. All right, I'm done with waffles, I promise. Now our baker Patty she sent me, it was like a threefold question about pâte sucrée, which is what we use a lot for tart crust, and ganache and chocolate tarts. And what I would like to do is I'm going to put, Patty, if you're watching, I'm going to put a pin in that question for next week because I really want to have some good solutions for you. So bakers, we'll be talking a little bit about tart crusts and ganache, which is that lovely chocolate filling or glaze, that versatile, heavenly concoction that we use so much in pastry. So we're just going to put a pin in that one. And then for our questions for today, so we had the waffles, and then we had the flour, and that's, oh, I had one more. I had someone write in to say they were having a challenging time finding whole wheat flour in their area. And this was for the power loaf from last week. Now, part of the power loaf were the whole grains, but I don't like to say no. I don't like to say that things won't work out for you bakers, because they will. What could be done is the amount of whole wheat flour could be replaced with bread flour, and it would work. Or, one last thing, oat flour. But oat flour can be more challenging to find than whole wheat flour. So we'll just leave it as replace the whole wheat flour with bread flour. That's it for today's questions. Now I'm going to check for questions, and then I'm going to do the big reveal about what butter brand won our poll. You can believe, nope, no questions. So we're just going to move on. You can best believe I'll be tagging our winning brand in this episode. All right. Kerrygold. Bakers, you love Kerrygold. And I was kind of surprised because as a baking butter, it can be a little bit challenging to handle. But you're in. You're all in with Kerrygold. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how to handle it, especially, and Emerald Cupcakes Los Angeles, she mentioned that she loves it for lamination. It is quite lovely for lamination, but here's the thing about Kerrygold, and part of what makes it so delicious. And I have the label right here. Kerrygold butter is made from milk from cows that are grass-fed. And the great thing about grass-fed cows that are grass-fed is that the best thing for the cows is that they can digest grass, unlike some of their feed, like corn, which is more challenging for them to digest. So the grass-fed affects their milk and the resulting butter in that it is actually more nutritious. The whole process is just more beneficial and more positive. So grass-fed butter, like, I was so thrilled, and I felt a little bit of remorse. Here's my confession, bakers. All those years that I taught weekends at Sur La Table, Kerrygold was our corporate sponsor. So they would send cases of Kerrygold butter. And I had to really learn how to work with it because it being grass-fed, it tended to soften. You looked at it and it softened. It wasn't like regular butter. Oh, no. So that's number one. The shortening time is less, all right? And number two, if, like Emerald Cupcakes Los Angeles, you're using it for laminating dough like croissants or Danish or puff pastry, you're going to be working in and out of the freezer. And that's pretty much it. I recommend it as a butter. I like a lot of brands, but I wanted to see what makes your heart sing. Like if and which butter makes your heart sing, bakers? And the answer was Kerrygold. So when that came in, I changed the shortbread recipe. I changed the shortbread recipe so that it would use 8 ounces of butter, 227 grams, and you can use any unsalted butter for this recipe. I know I've been really playing to my Kerrygold fans because, first of all, thank you so much for participating in yesterday's poll. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to be able to use, Kerrygold is sold in 8-ounce packages, not pound packages. And I thought, well, okay, let me just tweak the recipe, and I did it using Baker's percentages because they are so sexy, to use 1 package of the Kerrygold butter. So we're going to sail into that. I do have a batch of shortbread baked, and at the end of the show, I'm going to show you how to unmold and cut your shortbread. So why shortbread? Remember last week I asked you what you would like, and because we have yet to finish our bread series, which we will next week with our final, most highly hydrated dough, focaccia. But for those of you who are Ted Lasso fans, season 3 drops March. Oh my God, February. I got February on the brain. Today is the 11th. Ted Lasso season 3 drops March 15th. And one of the most charming plot points of that very charming show was Ted baking the shortbreads. So we're getting ready for a stream fest, on the 15th. Make a batch of shortbread, eat the whole batch while you're watching Ted Lasso with ice cold milk or cups of tea or whatever is your jam. You will be ready with this recipe for shortbread. All right. So let's get started, okay? Now, I was just yammering on about Kerrygold butter and not softening it. For this shortbread, it is not classically softened. It did not sit out for hours. Literally, I cut it up, and I recommend this. Always, when you're getting set for baking, even when you're using, and especially when you're using chilled butter, and when you're softening your butter, cut it up to chunks approximately this size. And the reason is, when we cut it up, we expose more of its surface area. So if we're chilling it, more of it's going to get chilled. And if we're softening it, it's going to be softened throughout the whole amount of butter, not just on the edges, because we've left it in a block. Now, I have the glass mixer right here, so I can show you the color of the butter after mixing. Because bakers, that's very important. We have been brainwashed by light and fluffy. Absolutely brainwashed. And JGF, I see your post. I am so sorry. I'm not up on that technology. So if you have a question, please pop it in the comments, or if you have a comment. Again, I apologize for my low techness. I promise you one day it will be less so. Okay, so now I back to my thought. So we have been brainwashed by light and fluffy. Light and fluffy, creaming fat and sugar together till they're light and fluffy, is very important for muffins, for cupcakes, and for cakes. but not usually for tart doughs, shortbreads, and cookies. We want to retain for tarts, tart doughs, shortbreads, and cookies, we want to retain some of the yellow color of the butter, as opposed to light and fluffy, where we mix it and we mix it and we mix it for 8-10 minutes, and we get so many big air pockets cut into that wall of fat that eventually the light reflects differently on the surface of the mixture, and that's what makes it light and fluffy. And we want that air to help our cupcakes rise, to help our cakes rise. But what that light and fluffy would translate into the shortbread would be spread. And it would also affect the texture in not a great way. So we are only going to mix this for 2 minutes. 2 minutes tops, that's it. We're using the paddle attachment because for creaming fat and sugar together, we always use the paddle attachment of our mixers, whether they're KitchenAids, Cuisinarts, Breville's, whatever you got, paddle, paddle, paddle. If you're using a hand mixer, you would use your standard beaters. Now, these can be made by hand, but if you have a mixer, use it. Use it, use it. It's taken up real estate in your kitchen. Let's use it. That's my new thing. I am using everything I own. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to combine, and the butter is cool. I wish you were all here. I would make you all feel the butter. Okay? Our beautiful Kerrygold butter. I'm going to dump in the granulated sugar. And if you look at the recipe, there is a rogue ingredient in it when I post the recipe first thing Monday morning. This is an extra, it is optional, but it's vanilla powder. And that's pure vanilla powder, not vanilla powder like, Starbucks or Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf sell for you to make your vanilla latte at home. This has no sugar added to it. And in the recipe, I will have links to at least 1 or 2 vanilla powders. If you're interested, you can order. It just leaves a lovely background flavor of the vanilla. Again, it's optional. I'm very fascinated by vanilla powder, and I wanted to introduce you guys to it as well. All right. So that was a long wind up to tell you that I'm going to add vanilla extract, and I have a little vanilla bean paste, so I'm adding that to the butter and sugar. And now we're going on the mixer. I have my flour is sifted, and you have to add the salt to your shortbread. It really, otherwise, they're not as successful. Salt makes things taste, in this instance, the function of the salt is to make the final product taste less sweet. So it's very important. And I'm just going to start the mixer, and as soon as the paddle begins to pick up the sugar, I'm going to go to medium speed. JGF 111, yes, you could use it. It's a real high butter. It's very, very high butter. I would recommend like a classic pot sucre maybe instead, but you could definitely give it a try. You have to press it. You could roll it out between sheets of parchment paper, or you could press it into the pan, Okay. It's still yellow, yellow, and that's what we want. And literally, you guys, I need you to set a timer. Absolutely set a timer. All right? And I'm going to actually do that. I don't like to stop and do things like this, but I have to. It's important. Now, in some of my recipes, when you see them on the website, there's some small amount of grams. 1 gram, 2 grams, 3 grams. I cannot recommend. This is like $10 on Amazon. It is a micro scale. It measures tenths of grams. I'll put a link in this week's post. Love yourself, bakers. Buy yourself one of these to measure those small amounts. I'll have the teaspoon. I'll have it in teaspoons as well. But this is really a game changer for accurate baking, these micro scales. Sometimes they're $8, but never more than 10. Now typical, we gotta stop halfway and scrape down the bowl. And one thing, there's my timer. One thing that we have to be very careful of is that there's no rogue butter and sugar. So what you have to watch out for is the paddle. Now bakers, I got this beautiful creaming action going on, but look right here, right on the top of the paddle, I have rogue butter and sugar. And so what's going to happen, if I don't scrape this down and get everything combined, this is going to make a sugar zit. That's what's going to happen. That undercream, that's what I call them. That undercream butter and sugar is going to caramelize on the surface of my shortbreads, and it is not going to be a good look. So remember, bakers, that you need to scrape down the paddle too. Okay, I'll try to stay in the shot. Okay, 1 more minute and we're done. So that's very, very important. We really need to pay attention. You've all seen it. It'll show up on a chocolate chip cookie, that over caramelized. We all know, okay? Now the next thing, because this dough is so full of butter, the pan does not need to be greased. And as a matter of fact, I would really discourage you from greasing the pan, because then you're going to have like a film of spray or greasing on the pan, and that's going to end up on the shortbread. So just remember, just like pie doughs that are full of fat, we don't grease a pie pan, and we're able to cut our slices nicely out of the pie pan. That's because of the high percentage of fat. Now, if you have something with no fat or low fat, you must grease, or it's going to be in that pan forever. Okay, that was about a minute. Now this recipe is written where you can use a 9-inch square pan or an 8-inch square pan, where you could chill this and roll it out. There's so many molds. There's so much stuff out there now. It's crazy. But the main thing I want to show you is, look at that color. It's still yellow, all right? And now Kerrygold is more yellow. Again, the grass feeding promotes that. But we can whip Kerrygold until it's light and fluffy, believe me. All right, so I just wanted to show you that that's still quite yellow. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the flour in 2 increments, because I don't want a flour bath. Been there, done that. But I am not over mixing. Like as soon as the flour disappears, I am adding the second half. Okay? And when we add our dry ingredients, bakers, we are on low speed, low speed. I could mix it in by hand if I wanted, but I already worked out today, so I think I'm good. And JGF 111, try it as cookies before you try it as a tart dough, okay? All right, my flour has disappeared. The second half is going in. Turn it back on. I'm using just an 8 by 8 inch square pan. If you have one with a removable bottom, that would be groovy. You don't need it though. You don't need it. You don't need any special pans. I would bet money, and I'm not a betting girl, that most of you have a pan like this in your pantry with your equipment. All right. So now what we're going to do, it kind of looks like a hot mess. I have some flour up the sides, but I'm going to literally finish it because I want to make sure I have I do not want a sugar zit on my shortbread. I just started that. But I know you all know what I mean. Now I'm going to take a bowl scraper and I'm going to get in here and I'm just going to finish mixing it by hand. And then I'm going to plop it out onto the work surface for one last. We're going to have a little bit of French action here with this dough. And that is a technique that the French like to call fraisage. And if you can see, it's coming together. Look at this, bakers. I'm coming right to camera. Right at you. Right at you, baby. I am using the heel of my hand, and I'm just, it's maybe 10 or 12. Sorry about the, there we go. Look at that. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous dough. All right? Fraisage. Now, if you're like, whoo, that French fraisaging is too much for me, just let it stay on the mixer until it becomes a cohesive mass, and then dump it out into your work surface. It will be like this, and you're going to get it in the pan. No grease, but if that makes you nervous, if you're like, is she for real? Am I going to be okay not greasing it? How am I going to get this out of the pan? What you can do is take a strip of parchment paper and put it, it's called a sling. And you line one side of your pan with the parchment paper, so when your shortbread's done, you can just lift it out. And if that makes you more comfortable, great. In fact, I'll do it that way so you guys can see. And then I'm going to really, making a sling for a pan can be a wonderful, a great thing to do. But just want to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. However, what can happen is if we don't trim the sling, it can plop over and inhibit the bake. Okay? So this recipe will work in a 9-inch square pan. It will work in an 8-inch square pan. They'll just be thicker. You could use a round pan, but you're going to have some pieces that might be a little off, not perfect squares or rectangles, but I would say they would make an awesome snack. So look, I've pushed and pushed and pushed. Now I'm going to show you a little trick. Uh-oh, what did I do with it? I have it right here. If you have, for those of you who are cake decorators and do sugar flour work, you can use a small rolling pin. It will fit in a 9-inch. It doesn't fit so well in my 8-inch. You can use a small rolling pin to help flatten out your dough. Then the dough is going to chill for an hour. And we are doing an experiment today, bakers. I baked the first pan at 350. I'm going to bake this one at 325. And of course, the one at 325 is going to take longer. And you'll see a side comparison in Monday's post on the website. And you can decide whether you like your shortbread a little bit more caramelized or you want them paler. Now, I could finesse this for quite a while until I pretty much went crazy. But the one thing, so I'm going to stop because we've got to keep the show going and not my OCD, which knows no bounds. When you use a sling, you want to make sure that you trim it so that the paper doesn't plop down on top of, like this. This is bad. This is what we don't want. So we have to make sure that we trim it, and it's not a half bad idea to take a little bit of something like, I have my very famous, I should market this. No, that's silly. It's better if it's made. You can put a little cake goo or shortening or butter and just stick that sling to the side of the pan. Okay? So there you go. 1 hour in the refrigerator, minimum. It can stay in there overnight. It doesn't matter. But that's imperative. Otherwise, they will not be as successful. We really want to make sure that that fat is nice and chilled before the shortbread go in the oven. Okay? All right. Last thing, bakers, and then I'm going to send you back to your kitchens so you can have a lovely Saturday afternoon of baking, or maybe you're researching recipes. We have St. Patrick's Day coming up this week, so maybe you are thinking about baking Irish soda bread. Put it in the comments if you have a special St. Patrick's Day bake. All right, so here we go, 350, and this took about 28 minutes in my oven, though remember, bakers, all of our ovens are different. So we're not going to be hard and fast on our times. That's not right. You guys know your ovens. So the thing, when you're unmolding, what you want to do, I've got my cutting board on top, and I'm going to flip. Okay. Oh, it's stuck. How nice. I swear to God, when you're live, anything can happen. And you guys are like, yeah, we know. We watch it. We watch it in real time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen, I've got a paring knife, my beautiful Nordic ware pan, and I'm just loosening the edges. Oh, bakers, this reminded me of something. If you're ever in a pinch, let's say, I don't know, maybe you're baking cupcakes late at night. Well, cupcakes aren't a good example. But if you have something that's sticking in a pan, you can chill it for 10 minutes, and that helps it unmold. I think I'm good now. So I loosen the sides. Whoops, I heard it. That's good. Look at this pan. Isn't that beautiful? From our friends at Nordic Ware. You can get that online. And then here, I'm just going to cut along the lines, And that's it. And I know normally we use a serrated knife, but to cut these shortbread, we're really better off with like I'm using a Santoku knife. But look, aren't they gorgeous? Look at that beautiful, beautiful texture. Oh my God, the smell. I wish you were here so that you could enjoy them. Shortbread, you know, obviously they make it in Scotland. They send it all over the world. It sits for months on a shelf and is perfectly fine. So you can store this airtight in a tin. It will keep for quite a while. And if you're someone who likes to send cookies to friends or loved ones, if you have someone overseas or somebody deployed and you would like to send a treat, I can't recommend these enough. I'll have the post to you first thing Monday morning. There'll be an Instagram reminder. And next week, we'll finish up our bread series, focaccia. And I cannot thank you one last time. I'm going to thank you for participating in the butter poll. Yay, Kerrygold! No shade to the other butters. All right, bakers, back to the kitchen. Ready, set, bake. And I'll see you next week. Thank you for joining. Bye.